Let's talk about Busuu. Let me try that again. Let's talk about Busuu. So what the heck is Busuu? Busuu is a language learning app, one of many language learning apps that are available. Now, if you're just starting out learning a language, it can be kind of intimidating. You've got a lot of apps to choose from. How do you know which ones are good and which ones are not so good? As a public service, I like to try out these apps and then do a review of them. 2 years ago, we did a review called Let's Talk About Duolingo. After that, I spent a year with Closemaster, and we did a video called Let's Talk About Closemaster. Ever since then, I have spent every day with an app called Busuu, so let's talk about Busuu. Now, before we get started, I want to make it very clear that this is not a paid endorsement. I don't work for Busuu, I'm not affiliated with Busuu, I don't get any money from Busuu, and I am not trying to sell you anything. I'm just a guy who's used Busuu every day for almost a year, and I wanted to make an honest review about my time with it. Now, I'll specify up front that this review is going to be specific to the German course offerings on Busuu. I didn't spend too much time looking at the other languages that are offered there, other than maybe a little bit of Spanish, but we'll talk about that more at the end of this season. So for the purpose of this review, we're going to talk about the German course offerings. Now, as usual, we're going to go through a list of pros and cons, things that I like, things that I didn't like, and at the very end of this video, I will come out with a personal recommendation, yay or nay, should you consider Busuu for your language learning application needs. So let's get into it. First thing about Busuu is that it is free, which is great if you're on a budget. Yes, there is a paid version available, but from what I could see, the advantages of the paid version didn't strike me as strong enough to justify actually paying for it. The paid version offers something called Busuu certificates. That's like you get a diploma or something, a statement from Busuu saying that you passed this course or whatever. If that's meaningful to you, then, you know, go ahead. The other nice thing about the paid version of Busuu is that it gets rid of the ads. The ads are a little bit annoying, especially in the mobile app. But if you can learn to tolerate the ads, every time you start a lesson you have to sit through an ad first. If you can deal with that, then there's really no reason to upgrade to the paid version. Another nice thing about Busuu is that there is both a web and a mobile version of this app available. That means you can access it through a web browser on your laptop or desktop computer, or you can access it through an app on your tablet or your phone. Last year, I had a similar choice with Closemaster, and I decided to use exclusively the web version of Closemaster. This year I decided, you know what, let's mix things up a bit. I decided to ignore the web application, and I used entirely the mobile application for this year with Busuu. The web application looked perfectly fine from what I could see of it. I didn't spend a lot of time with it though, so this review is going to be pretty much exclusive to the mobile app, which was pretty solid. There were a few minor bugs that I noticed in the mobile app. None of them were showstoppers. They range from cosmetic to, I'd say, mildly annoying. Let's talk about them real quick just to get them out of the way. There is a leaderboard in Busuu if you're competitive, if you like to treat it like a video game. You can compete with other users of the app. Every week there's a new leaderboard, and you can try to rise to the top of that leaderboard. It can be kind of fun, I guess. We're gamifying the language learning process. Whatever, maybe you're not competitive, maybe you don't care how you're doing compared to other language learners, in which case the leaderboards are not important at all. It's up to you. The one bug I found here is that through the week, it shows you, when you log into the app, it shows you how many days are remaining in the current leaderboard. Like, there's 5 days left in this leaderboard, there's 4 days left in this leaderboard, etc., etc. When you get to the last day, it switches to hours remaining, but it doesn't update the label. What I mean by that is it'll suddenly say on Sunday morning, there are 17 days remaining in this leaderboard, and you think to yourself, wait, what? I thought it reset every Sunday. And a couple hours later, it says there's 15 days remaining in this leaderboard, and you think to yourself, oh, it's counting down the hours, but it still says days. This is a very mild cosmetic bug, but it has sat there for the entire time that I've been using Busuu. It's concerning to me that such a simple bug, it would take them 5 minutes to fix this, it's still there after a year. That tells me that the developers of this app don't really pay too much attention to it, and it's not getting a lot of care and attention in terms of updates, which is maybe mildly concerning. Having said that, I didn't really notice any other problems with the mobile app, except I will note one other bug that I found is that you don't always get notifications from this app in a timely manner. I don't know why. Sometimes when someone replies to one of your comments or corrects your exercise or asks you to correct their exercise, we'll talk about that later on, you get a notification from the app right away, and you can open up the app and see what that notification is about. That's great, but sometimes you don't get that notification right away. Sometimes there's like a 2 or 3 hour delay for no reason that I can see, and sometimes there's a very long delay. And sometimes you don't seem to get the notifications at all. You go to open the app and you see, holy cow, there's 7 notifications sitting here that have been there for like 12 hours and the app didn't tell me. I thought maybe there's something wrong with my phone or there's something wrong with the permission setup that I gave the app. But I talked to other users of the app and they reported very similar experiences. So I don't think it's my phone. I think it's there's something up with the app itself not sending out those notifications as they happen. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of annoying if someone replies to your comment and you don't get that notification. It looks like you're ignoring them, like you come back 2 hours later and it's like, oh geez, they replied to me. Other than that, I didn't encounter any serious problems with the mobile app. It doesn't crash, it doesn't hang. It seems pretty solid. So let's get into the heart of it. Let's talk about the course offerings. And again, I'm focusing specifically on the German course offerings here. There's a decent spread of difficulty levels. It ranges from A1, absolute beginner, up to B2, which is upper intermediate. Unfortunately, for their German course offerings, there's nothing higher than that. There is no C1 or C2 course offering for German in the Busuu app. That's not ideal, but okay. If you're a beginner or intermediate level language learner, great. There's plenty of stuff here for you to do. And the course material is reasonably good. I will note that they use actual native speakers. This is something that came up in my review of Closemaster last year. Closemaster uses the robot voice to speak some of the example sentences. Sometimes, I mean, that's hit and miss, right? Sometimes the robot voice is great. Other times you can't even tell what it's supposed to be saying. On Busuu, they actually took the time to bring in German native speakers and they record them speaking these lines. And that's great because you can hear how it's actually spoken by a native speaker and you can imitate that. You could try to sound like that person. One possibly negative thing that I will say about the course offerings on Busuu is that they are grouped by conversational area and not by linguistic area. What I mean by that is that you get sections on Busuu like traveling or making a hotel reservation or ordering something in a restaurant or buying something in a store. They give you a real world scenario and they give you a bunch of example phrases and sentences. It's almost like a phrase book where you can listen to native speakers have a conversation about a specific subject and you pick up the language by listening to them and by repeating those sentences. Okay, when you think about it, that's basically how you learned your native language. That's how most people learn their native language. But secondary language acquisition, to me, this isn't the best way to do it in my opinion. You might disagree with me. It's controversial. Personally, I like to see language learning apps that focus on specific areas of syntax and grammar. For example, on Closemaster, I noted last year that there's a way to focus on specific parts of speech. I want to practice prepositions. I don't care what kind of conversation they're being used in. I want to see how they're used in a sentence. Any sentence, it doesn't matter. On Busuu, they focus on real-world scenarios that you can practice along with, and the idea is they don't teach you syntax and grammar directly, rather you pick it up over time through osmosis. Your brain starts to spot those patterns as to how these sentences should be structured, and ideally you couple that with a good grammar textbook that can explain these concepts to you. This is what a subordinate sentence clause looks like in German, and this is why the verb moves to the end, and yada yada yada. But they don't teach you all that stuff directly on Busuu. They don't even try. They just give you a bunch of sentences, and over time your brain spots these patterns. That's similar to how Duolingo does it. I'm not wild about this approach, but it is what it is. This could be a positive point or a negative point. It depends on your language learning style and how you prefer to learn languages. Now, another negative or possibly negative point that I will list about the course offerings on Busuu, and this is maybe a little controversial, they inject politics into some of their lessons. This is something I noticed more in the upper intermediate, the B2 level lessons that they have on Busuu, not so much in the lower, like A1, A2. But at the B2 level, they inject politics into a lot of their lessons. I want to be careful how I phrase this because I don't want to make anybody angry. You might argue that this is a part of language learning. It's very difficult to study a language without learning at least a thing or two about the culture of the people who speak that language. If you're learning German, it's sort of implied that you also want to learn about Germany and how German people view different political subjects. In my opinion, and this is my personal opinion, I don't want to see that in a language learning application at all. For me, learning a language is a purely linguistic academic endeavor. I don't care about politics. I especially don't care about Busuu's view on politics. And at some points in the B2 language course, it honestly felt as though the app was preaching instead of teaching, which I really didn't appreciate. It feels like you're being lectured on stuff like, oh, vegetarianism is more ethical than eating meat, or we're all going to die by global warming, or how are immigrants and refugees viewed in Germany, or how blended families are becoming more and more of a normal thing in Germany. I'm not here to learn any of that. I don't care. I don't want to hear it. I'm here to learn the language. So this could be a plus or a minus depending on how you view politics, and depending on to what extent you feel politics belongs in a language learning application. In my opinion, I don't think it belongs at all. I don't want to talk about politics when I'm learning a language. Now, let's talk about a couple of neat features that I really quite like about Busuu. If you watched the review of Closemaster or the review of Duolingo from previous years, you will note that I spend a lot of time talking about user forums and interactions between users on a language learning website or a language learning application. I think it's very important. I stress this every time I do one of these reviews because I honestly think, I've said this multiple times, I'll say it one more time, you can learn more through interactions, simple interactions with native speakers, than you can learn from 1,000 flashcard drills. Busuu doesn't have a user forum per se, but they do have an exercise section where you are challenged to answer a specific question, or to write a caption for a photo. This is kind of a neat feature. They'll show you a random photo from some stock photo collection, and they'll ask you to write a caption for it in your target language. Now, you could be descriptive. You could write something very simple, like I see a photo of a man climbing a mountain. Or you could go for broke. You could make up a story. Why is the guy climbing a mountain? Maybe he's running from the police. Maybe he's about to be eaten by a bear. You could make up a story and write a paragraph or two about it. It's kind of a fun way to approach the problem. And once you hit submit, your post is then visible to native speakers of your target language, and they can correct you. They can tell you, no, you phrased this incorrectly, or you used the wrong word here, or the syntax is a bit backwards. You can get corrections from native speakers. This is invaluable. I really, really, really like this feature. It's reminiscent of the old HelloTalk app. If you're not familiar with HelloTalk, don't bother looking it up. It is terrible now. It used to be really good. It was an app where you could chat in different languages with native speakers of different languages from around the world. And it was used primarily for a while by language learners, people who wanted to learn other languages. Slowly over time, because it was largely unmoderated, people would post stuff that was off topic to language learning, and some people were trying to treat it like a dating site. If there was a female who was posting there, she would get hit on by 1,000 horny guys. The usual stuff you see on internet discussion forums. It's largely the same reason why the Duolingo forums were eventually shut down, because of scammers and spammers. It is what it is. The internet is a pretty horrible place sometimes. But on Busuu, these exercises are guided. They're moderated, in the sense that they'll give you a specific question to answer, like, what did you eat for breakfast this morning? Or where would you like to go on vacation? They'll give you an open-ended question, and you answer it either by writing or speaking in your target language. And then native speakers of that language can correct you if you made mistakes, or they can offer alternative phrasings, or they can explain, we don't say it that way. What you said was understandable, but we don't say it that way. We would rather say it this way, or whatever. And this is a two-way street. Some of those Germans are also trying to learn English, and they'll speak or write something in English, and you can jump in and correct their English. What I like to try to do is I like to offer corrections in German. This is an extra way for me to practice the language. And I think by offering corrections in their native language, it helps the corrections be more useful to them, rather than answering in English, which is a language that they're struggling to learn. So I quite like this feature. I think it's a really neat feature that Busuu offers, and the native speakers who hang out there, at least in the German section, are very good. They're very helpful. I've learned a ton from some of the corrections I've received, and also when I go to correct a German person, sometimes they'll say, why can't I say it this way? And it really makes me think, like, about my own language. Like, why can't you say it that way? Well, it just doesn't sound right, and I have to go and look something up in my native language to help explain it to them. We don't say it that way because it's technically wrong, but you'd be understood, but we don't say it that way. those are kind of interesting conversations, at least I find. Now, I will put a minor negative point on this. Every week, the available exercises resets. You get a different small batch of exercises that you can go through throughout the week, and then every week you get a new batch of them. What I find is that there's a lot of repetition. They've got a small library of these stock questions that they throw out, and they just recycle them. For example, one that comes up seemingly every single week is the challenge is to translate the sentence, "His name is not Alberto." Okay, that's a pretty basic sentence, so, I mean, no problem. But, I mean, every single week, you get the same challenge. Translate the sentence, "His name is not Alberto." There's only so many ways you can say, "His name is not Alberto" in German before you start to go crazy. I eventually started writing entire paragraphs. I'd make up some nonsense story about a guy who's not called Alberto, just because I was tired of answering that one. Come on, Busuu, let's get some variety in the questions. Okay, so overall verdict. Is Busuu worthy of a recommendation? If you're looking for a language learning app, should you check out Busuu? I'm gonna say, yeah, sure, I'd recommend it. Maybe a week recommend. I would recommend it. If you're at the beginner to intermediate level, I think there's some good stuff here. In particular, I really like the exercises section where you can write or speak in your target language and get corrections from native speakers. That's invaluable. But even the course offerings at the beginner to intermediate level are reasonably good. They don't teach specific points of syntax and grammar, but they do give you a good feel of the language, and certainly they'll help you with your pronunciation. Pronunciation. How ironic that I mispronounced the word pronunciation. They'll help you work on your pronunciation if you speak along with the native speakers, and if you try to answer the weekly challenge questions by speaking them instead of just typing something out. But if you're at the advanced level, I'm going to say that Busuu is probably not super useful to you. The course offerings are a little elementary. Of course we hit a traffic jam downtown. We always hit a traffic jam downtown. By elementary, I'm not trying to sound egotistical. I've been learning German for quite a few years now, and I found that the B2 course was quite good in terms of difficulty, but everything underneath that, B1 and down, was just too basic. I got down to the A2 level, and I mean, it's questions like, John throws a ball, Mary catches the ball, Mary throws the ball back to John. You know, it's too basic. I can't do it. I didn't even try the A1 level because it would be even basicer than that. Basicer, is that a word? So, should you check out Busuu? Yeah. I'd recommend it. But where do you go if you're an advanced student and you want an app that can help you get your daily practice in while still challenging you? If you're at the C1 level or higher, or even at the B2 level or higher, there's not a lot to choose from, at least not that I can find. Most language learning apps are aimed at the complete beginner to intermediate levels. It is what it is. So where do you go if you're an advanced student? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that one. I'm still looking for an app that will continue to challenge me as I continue to increase my skill in German. And again, I'm not trying to sound egotistical, but I've been learning this language for a while, and I can't seem to find an app. That does sound egotistical, you know, I'm going to cut that. So if you have a suggestion for an app, please post it in the comments down below or send me an email. I'll check it out. And camera 2 is buggered again. Okay, so there's my year in with Busuu in a nutshell. I do recommend it. It's maybe a weak recommend, but I do recommend it. If you're at the advanced level, you might not get as much out of it. But, I mean, that's probably true for most language learning apps. It is what it is. Once you get up to the advanced levels of learning in any language, it's difficult to find an app that will challenge you. The best approach at that point is to engage in actual conversations with native speakers of your target language, because you're just not going to get much out of flashcard drills and apps that will tell you more and more of the same thing over and over again. But if you're at the beginner to intermediate level, then I would recommend Busuu, because it's a decent app. It's decent all around. Maybe not the best option out there, but there's nothing wrong with it. So that'll do it for today. We will see you next time on Lernen und Fahren.